Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Cali and Craig Talk. I'm Callie.
And I'm Craig.
And today we have a super amazing guest. Author Harry F. Ray is joining us. Harry, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody, to all the listeners. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Harry F. Ray. I've been publishing with Deep Desires for donkey's years, it feels like. But I think possibly the first few years after Deep Desires cranked up into operation, I slathered my little manuscript along to you guys, and you snapped it up, and here we are, all these decades.
Well,
centuries.
It feels like it in a good way.
It feels like somewhere between 10 to 150 years later, we're still happily publishing together.
Oh, that's so awesome. So at what point, Harry, did you decide to be an author, and what exactly was the path that you took to publication?
Wonderful question. I think I can tell you roughly the arena I was in when I realized that I wanted to do something along these lines. And it was way, way back in high school, so a million years ago. And I grew up in Scotland, and Scotland's part of the UK. And when I was growing up, the UK had this very homophobic law from the days of Margaret Thatcher, may she be cursed, that all gay things were to be removed from any library, school, public place. So in my high school library, there was no literature, no books, no pamphlets, no nothing that would even have any relation to anything remotely gay. And we're talking from Oscar Wilde onwards, nothing, removed from the shelves, banished. Public libraries as well, everywhere. There was nothing there to read that was about gay people. And being a gay person myself, I'm someone who liked to read. I was thinking, well, isn't this odd? That all in all human history, no gay person has written about anything about related to being gay. So it felt a little bit odd back from when I was younger, and I thought I should write something about that. And then I started to discover, actually, it's just been hidden from us or stolen from us, if you like. There are gay books, there is gay literature. I think the first kind of gay book I read was Christopher Isherwood. I think it was around 15, 16. And I was given a book of Christopher Isherwood, who's a very famous English author from the 1920s, 1930s. He went to Berlin. He wrote about having fun in Berlin. And fast forward later, that book became the musical we all know and love, Cabaret, and the wonderful Liza Minnelli. And fast forward even further, when Liza Minnelli and her ilk and her mother, Judy Garland, and people like her are such pantheons of gay culture. And if we cycle backwards, where did those people come from? They came from a gay author who went to Berlin and wrote about being in Berlin. I'm reading Christopher Isherwood that when I was reading that as a young guy, thinking, wow, these things have an impact. They have a trickle down effect that goes down through the centuries. And I thought I would love to be a part of that, even just one time, even just one thing. So that was roughly my kind of come to Jesus moment, shall we say. And ever since then, it's just been figuring out, well, how does one do that? How does one write a book? How does one come up with a story? How does one write dialogue? And so forth and so forth. And the journey kind of really started with Craig at Deep Desires Press. Craig, looked at the first book I ever wrote, took it, and here we are after all these years publishing with Deep Desires, and it's been a roundabout of a journey. I've published traditionally, independently, self-published, all the kind of gamut of things. But still, Craig was my first, shall we say. I don't know how many people can say that to you, Craig, but you were my first. I don't think I was yours, but you were mine.
I took your publishing V card.
Yes, you certainly did.
He took mine too.
Oh, there you go.
I'm first for a lot of people. So you've had like this fantastic journey to becoming an author that started way back in about the same age as me, actually. So you've written a lot of great things. At Deep Desires, we have the Line of Succession series. We have All the Lovers. You have a young adult book coming out with us next year.
Yes, very exciting.
Oh my gosh.
I've read the first of your, is it Galactic Captains with 9 Star Press?
Yes.
And I haven't opened it yet, but I do have Why in Paris sitting on my tablet waiting to be
Mm-hmm.
read. So you've got like a ton of things, and I think we're almost to the signing point for that short story anthology that we might hopefully have
Yes,
if you finish it.
I am plugging away at an anthology of gay short stories that will be in Craig's wonderful hands within the month, shall we say. It's
Perfect.
almost there. I'm just tweaking away at it, and that's the kind of next thing I'm excited with Deep Desires, because that is really just a smorgasbord of bits of genre fiction, and all to do with gays. Everything I write, I'm interested in exploring the dimensions of relationships between gay people. Doesn't just have to be romantic, but physical, sexual, emotional, hateful, if that's such a word, villains and heroes and all these kind of dynamics of how gay people interact. That's the thread that runs through everything that I write about. That's the kind of what keeps me going as a writer, thinking, well, what other kind of elements of relations between gay people can we explore? And one of the ones that also I was really happy to have published with Deep Desires was my young adult coming of age novel. Oh, sorry. I would say it's about a young adult, but it's not YA. It is the opposite of YA, but it's about a gay teenager who's 19, who is loosely based on myself. It's a semi-autobiographical book called All the Lovers. And I'd already published a few of the Line in Succession. I'd already published a few of the Galactic Captains books. So there was kind of ongoing kind of things that I've been working on. But All the Lovers was the first kind of thing that was about me, that was about taking elements of myself as an author, as a person, and molding that into something along the lines of a story, and kind of going back and forward with Craig and the wonderful John, who's the brains behind the publishing brawn of Deep Desires, I would say. And kind of working through the process. I think that book, it took us a year and a half to really get right. Something
Yeah, I
along those
think we
lines.
asked you for a few rewrites for how
Mm-hmm.
you approach it. And so, yeah, we worked on it for quite a while.
We did, but this is a wonderful thing I think about working with yourselves, is that you see the author and you see what they're
Hmm.
trying to do, and you work with them. And I think, Callie, you had the same experience when I was listening to your episode. They really worked with you, they really talked to you, they really were there to listen. This is not a kind of yes, no, thank you very much, no, thank you. They want to work with you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I love about working with Craig, and I work very closely with Craig. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best things about them is that they really do care about their authors and they care about, what you want. It's
Yeah.
not just about selling books, which of course they care about as publishers, but I think that it's very obvious for any author that works with them that they care more about what you care about. And that's what's
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah, and I think they really take the time to let. Sorry, Craig, we're just going to keep giving you compliments. So
Sure,
feel,
I
Oh,
feel free
Craig
to go
loves
on
it.
mute.
Oh, Craig loves it. Come on.
But I would say that of all the kind of people I've published with, of all the things I've done in this, I don't know how many, 8 or so years of actually publishing, working with Deep Desires remains the pinnacle of publishing for me. And just the way they work is so wonderful. The way they see people, and I always recommend pitching stories to Deep Desires with writers that I'll meet, and I meet a lot of them, and I talk to a lot of them. A lot of them ask me, well, what should I do with this? Where should I go with that? And I often suggest Deep Desires is a place to try, because like you said, Callie, they want to know the story you want to tell, and they want to help you get there.
Mm.
I think that is what is so different from other indie publishers, from other traditional publishers, and also even from self-publishing. I tried self-publishing a little while ago, and I hated it. It was horrible. I wanted to die every single moment of the time. I was like, why did I not just ask Craig to help me? Why have I done to myself?
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a kind of BDSM torture I decided to put myself through. And I came out the other end of it deciding I'd rather write about it than experience it. So that's what's so wonderful about Deep Desires, is they have the knowledge and the skills to pull something together like this, like that. It's
Yeah.
so and so much work obviously goes behind the scenes, but they really know what they're doing, and I really
Yeah.
trust them. And if it, if it was only up to me, I would publish everything with them. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've signed my soul away to several people, and I have to try with them first. But as soon as those contracts with the Devils run out, I'll be running back to Deep Desires. But
Harry.
I've said worse, and I will say worse.
So we did get a little off track with the question, but I'm fine with that.
Which
But
is fine.
to circle back, so you have written a lot. Now, do you have a favorite series or book that you wrote? It does not have to be with us, although I would appreciate
Yeah,
if
no,
it
it
is.
can be anyone.
I am both contractually obligated and emotionally obligated to say definitely The Line of Succession is my favorite, because it is the first thing that I wrote. I think it's probably the first complete story that I came up with. And I know I want to talk a little bit about that later, about how I came up with the story, because I think it's a good model for maybe aspiring authors to think about, well, what do they want to write about. But with the Line of Succession series, and for those who don't know, it's essentially about an insatiable, closeted bottom who is the heir to the throne of the UK. And he also has a evil, in inverted commas, twin sister who knows his secrets, many of them, and is out to steal his inheritance, is out to steal his right to the throne. We have anonymous hookups, we have cruising, we have palace orgies, we have secret sex dungeons, and we also have, what I think is a beautiful romance at the heart of it. And it's a different type of romance because it starts with a couple already very established. They've been 15 years together, this couple, James and Andrew, who are at the heart of the Line of Succession series. And they're coming up in a big transition in their lives, in their relationships, when all of a sudden the heir to the throne has turned 30 years old. And, for all intents and purposes, he's single. So, nobody in the world gets more, examined and looked at in terms of their personal lives and relationships than a royal. And I think we all remember Diana and Meghan Markle and even William and Harry back in the day. Who were they going to marry? It's such a national obsession, at least in the UK, that it's on the verge of sickening, at least in my opinion. So I wanted to write about this couple who are about to go through a lot of pressure in their lives and in their relationships. And also pressure together. I wanted to explore the dimensions between a couple that have been together for a very long time, and how do they deal with these changes in their lives? How do they deal with these changes in their relationships? And what's that going to look like as they go through their professional and their personal lives? How does their relationship and the love they have between them continue or carry on? And it's very, very exciting that the last book in the series, or at least the last book in this collection of the series, is coming out with Deep Desires in days' time. Whenever this podcast drops, it may already be out. So it's up for pre-order now. But it will be out November the 11th. Is that right?
The 12th.
The 12th.
Wait, the 12th.
10th, Friday. Yeah.
Wait.
10th.
What? 10th?
Friday
12th?
the 10th. Yeah.
I just
Excellent.
posted
Friday
it
the 10th.
everywhere this morning. I have no idea.
Never mind. Nobody's going to really read it because you have to read the whole series first of all. So
that's true. Oh my gosh. Well, you're like a fantastic guest because you just like go right into like exactly what the question is, like the next one. So like I either set the questions up great or you're just like a fantastic guest, but I'm giving you,
Oh, thank you.
I'm giving you the credit because like you just like woo, right into the next question, which is amazing. I have not read all the way through. I did read book 1, which was amazing and was very interesting. But I have to ask you this for people who don't know. You did just touch on it a little bit, but for people who don't know, how hot are these books? What is the heat level? Like, give me a heat level of a number. Like, we're going to go 0 to 10. 10 is smoldering.
I'm going to say what I think, and then I think we'll hear what you two think, and then we'll compare notes. Because I would say it is a relatively realistic examination of the kind of sex that many gay men and gay couples are having. So in my perspective, from my opinion, I wasn't writing it thinking, oh, I'm about to write something smoking hot. I was thinking, I'm going to write something as unvarnished and as real and as, kind of as close to the experiences that I know and I think that people are having as I possibly can. Now, I will say that palace sex orgies and secret dungeons are something that, maybe they exist. And let's probably be honest, I'm sure they do exist underneath Buckingham
I think
Palace.
they do. I'm on team that they do.
100%.
I am on team with you. They definitely exist. Come on. They do.
So let's say, regardless of the location, certainly the ways and the types of sex that people are having, I would say are realistic. Now, I think in terms of heat level, that probably is pushing it up a little bit in terms of heat. So I will
pretty
say
high. It's pretty high.
Maybe around a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10.
I think we're off the 10. I don't think 10 is enough to contain the book. And I think you did a fantastic job at the realism, by the way. I really do. I think the characters are extremely believable. I think that it's very quick to see which character is your favorite, which I'm going to ask you that in a little bit, or Craig's going to ask you. I'm not sure. But yeah, I am a huge fan of your writing. I think that you did a phenomenal job. And I can't wait to read the rest of the books. I don't want them spoiled for me, honestly. I'm like, no one spoiled them for me. But yeah. I'm a fan. And yeah, no, I'm with you. Heat level 10 is not enough. I think we're at a 15. Craig?
Yeah, you've read a lot of gay sex, Craig.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably about a 15, but I think what pushes it up there is, again, I want to say this is a realism, but it's the messiness of it. So I don't want to
messiness in a good way, shall we say?
In a good way, yes.
Not in the other way.
Yeah, not in the someone didn't. Yeah, never mind.
Okay.
Finish that sentence.
Moving on.
I want to, without giving any spoilers, I think it's book 3, right? Somewhere in book 3, we find out that there's a secret relationship between two people that is a bit of a power dynamic that gets really messy, but then that sort of just amplifies the intensity of the sex scenes between them. And then even when they go back to their regular partners and they have sex, knowing there's that sort of secret double life, that just really amps it up.
Thank you. And I'll say also that my kind of favorite thing, one of the reasons that I'm writing about, sex at a 15 level, shall we say, is for my kind of other parts of my life. I'm a sexual health educator, and to me, it's incredibly there is nothing more important to me as a gay man than explaining to other gay men and other men who might want to have sex with men the realities of what it is like to have sex, because within the kind of the mind of a man, shall we say, or the mind of a man who might be interested in other men, there is so much baggage, there's so much complications, there's so many things to think about, and it can be very, very difficult for some people to marry the needs and desires and feelings and emotions with the realities of how and when and how and why to have sex, and how to have the kind of sex they want in a safe and fulfilling way. So one of the things I like to try and do in my books, and the kind of at least in the Line of Succession series for sure, as we get onwards to the series and explore this couple, one of the things I'm most proud of about the series is that we really talk about things like what it's like to be, HIV positive and have sex. What is it like to be, the partner of someone like that? What is it like to have desires that are perhaps, self, they could be harmful potentially. How does one deal with that? What is it like to take PrEP, which is pills that prevent potentially having HIV infection? There's a whole the mechanics of safer sex, vaccines, monkeypox, hepatitis, all the things that kind of gay men and men that have sex with men should know about, but many of us don't. To me, it's a kind of bit of I won't say the reason, because I don't think I want to write necessarily a messagey book. I don't want to kind of, get on a soapbox and kind of wag my finger at people. But I want to explore the realities of those sorts of things and hopefully help people understand just a little bit more who are reading it. Oh, I never knew, that someone who's on a successful HIV treatment they can't pass on the virus to anybody, no matter if they get fisted 50 ways from Sunday. I like to kind of talk about these sorts of things because actually in contemporary literature, and particularly MM and gay literature, it's very, very hard to find, someone that will write about it in such a way that it's not preachy, or it's not kind of, making assumptions, or it's not taking necessarily kind of heterosexual way of looking at sex and romance and then applying that onto, just two men. I know, Craig, you and I have talked about this before in the past, where in some, I think less nowadays, but I certainly read some kind of 10, 15 years ago, books with two male characters where the way they have sex is so divorced from the way that, two men in real life would have sex, that it kind of just is, it's like night and day. So I think trying to bring together some of those ideas into kind of something that feels more real is something I like to try and do.
I am a huge fan, and the more you talk, the bigger of a fan I become. Like, I have to be honest with you. I am like, I don't know that you could make me any more impressed with you, but I really am.
Thank you.
I mean, honestly, everything that you just said is so fantastic. And I'm incredibly humbled when I listen to you talk about your writing style. I mean, it is really like you are really something special. Like, really. Because
That's very nice to hear. That's very nice to hear. I usually hear the opposite from people, so it's very nice to hear that from you.
Oh, come on. Who would say that? Yeah, no, for me, like my educational like things in my books are nowhere near that. I mean, John and I joke because I'll ask him to give me like a word for something, like a vegetable, and then we teach people like a new vegetable in my dialogue, and that's about it. That's where my education goes. And I think that just listening to you talk about the way that you're able to integrate these subjects that are delicate for some people, that are really necessary for some people to know, I'm really impressed with that. I'm on it, honestly. I'm almost speechless. I'm gonna let Craig take the next question because I can't even with you. Like, you're really just like such an impressive human being. And I do not give praise often, by the way. Like, I give Craig praise often. Let me say that because I'm not cutting that out.
Craig's wonderful. He needs all the and he deserves all the praise that we give him. So,
well, we do head pats, like usually I'm like head pats for me and head pats for Craig, and then it feels good. But yeah.
If any listeners want head pats, just DM me and I will DM you a pat.
No, you will not.
Oh, it's just for you? Okay,
yes.
It can be exclusive.
Those are bestie head pats. I'm sorry. No.
All right. Sorry, offer rescinded. But I did want to jump on this safer sex education thing briefly because a lot of MM and gay authors want to include safer sex information in their books, which is a noble goal. But quite often it just comes down to use condoms and then get tested before not using condoms. And that is definitely how some gay couples operate, but it's not necessarily how a lot of gay couples operate, or how gay men have sex. And Harry has been really interesting in all of his books because his conversations I'll speak directly to you. Your conversations
Thank you.
On safer sex information feel incredibly natural in the book. Normally when I see these sorts of things, I want to cut it out or like trim it down or let's change this information. With yours, it's like, this is absolutely perfect. I remember reading, I want to say it was book 4, where you introduced, there's a doctor who works in who does a lot of safer sex stuff and was having a conversation with one of the characters, and I'm adding all these comments like, oh, undetectable equals untransmittable, PrEP, and there's this and there's that. And I was so excited to see all of this information. And I remember you bringing in monkeypox vaccinations at one point. I was like, I have never seen this in a book anywhere. And in book 6, I remember leaving comments like, oh, I'm actually learning stuff here that I didn't know. And for context, for listeners outside of working for Deep Desires, I worked not directly in queer sex ed, but sort of loosely tied to queer sex ed. So I'm a little bit more knowledgeable than the average person, but still I was blown away by the quality of information, the fact that I learned stuff, and then the care with which it was put in there. Like, it's just phenomenal. It blows me away even thinking about it.
And I think that the most important thing is not to be judgmental of the characters. I think as an author, the characters will make wrong choices. They'll do things they shouldn't do. They will misbehave. Hopefully, they'll fall in love. They'll fall out of love. They'll do things that, leave the reader shaking their head. But within that, I think I've read things in the past where I feel like there was judgment values made upon characters for for lots of things, but particularly kind of ways and styles that they might want to have sex. And there's also this idea that, well, a couple just needs to get tested and they're fine. From the day after they can, gone to the wind with all their kind of precautions. And I just want to scream at them, girl, don't trust them. The biggest lie in the world is I got tested last week. Don't listen to her. Just keep yourself secure and safe, and don't trust necessarily that that's the right way for men to deal with it, because it's you can there's similarities between obviously heterosexual and gay relationships and couples and all the rest of it, but there's also a lot of differences, and we have to be honest about those differences as authors, because I think for the reader and for the kind of the wider cultural milieu that we're putting the book out into, it should have some level of just reality, so that anyone that picks it up is not going to get the wrong message, shall we say. It doesn't even have to be the best message, or the message that someone like myself who is literally an educator on these things has to put in, but at least not giving out the wrong message, which is all they have to do is grab condoms from the nightstand and be done with it. Or my favorite one, I don't know how blue we can get in this podcast, but whenever I see someone rolling down a condom for a blowjob in a book, I just think, wow, that person is neither given nor received, with in their entire existence. That's all I'll say on that subject.
Had to mute myself.
We're okay with that level of blue. Yeah.
We're good.
There are some people that use condoms for blowjobs, but I've not encountered one. We'll put it that way. So let's try to get back onto this list here. I think where we left off is, can you remember when you came up with the idea for the series?
Yes.
Or like how that initial idea generation came about? Like, where was that spark that led to the line of succession?
I can tell you exactly the place. It was the royal wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge. I believe 2010. If 2011, something around that time, the royal wedding was. We all got the day off from work, which was bizarre. So we're all sitting at home watching this thing on television. And I remember thinking to myself while I was watching this, I was thinking, isn't that lovely that the heir to the throne of the UK is straight, we presume, and is marrying a nice white woman, and everything's all wrapped up in a nice little bow. Isn't that very nice for them? And then I just thought, well, what if that wasn't the case? What if they were, gay, or secretly gay, or were twins, or all the kind of, variations upon that theme that the line of succession touches upon? And it was in that moment that I started kind of percolating the story of the line of succession. So back 2010, 2011, whenever the royal wedding was, and it obsessed me. It kind of, it took me over. That's when I know an idea is worth pursuing, because I think of nothing else but it for quite a while. And it actually began life as a TV pilot script. So I wrote up a TV pilot script of the line of succession, and spent some time trying to pitch it around, and 2-3 years kind of going round and round in circles with TV pilot scripts, which is always a way of these things. And eventually I thought, well, I'm not getting anywhere with this, but it's a story that I feel needs to be told. So I started then to kind of adapt it into the book. But that was really where it came from, was that idea of thinking, that the royal family, or at least the real royal family that we see in front of us, and we know it's a shit show behind closed doors, and obviously a little bit more outside of that. And I think actually what's been interesting is that some of the themes that I've been writing about in the Line of Succession series have then end up kind of coming out into real life. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
I wrote about, you know, a senior member of the royal family having a relationship with a non-white person in the Line of Succession books before Meghan Markle, when she was still in Suits. And then, you know, a few years down the road, she's getting married and kind of going through absolute hell because, you know, because of who she is. And it's kind of insane to see that you just have to scratch under the surface a tiny little bit and it all comes out in terms of, you know, the real royal family. So I feel even actually the drama that the real House of Windsor has now has well surpassed any sort of drama I could write about in the Line of Succession. I really feel they've taken it to another level. But that was, yeah, that was where I kind of came up with the idea for the series.
That's fascinating. And I'm a huge Meghan Markle fan. I think that she's brilliant. I really
Yes,
like her. I
she's
think,
wonderful.
I mean, not only is she beautiful, but I think she's brilliant. I really do. And I give her so much credit for everything that she's had to go through. Really
Absolutely.
huge fan. So now I get to ask a question that I've been waiting to ask, and I wonder if you do or not, but do you have a favorite character? And I have a couple questions about characters. So
Okay.
this one is very specific. Do you have a favorite character in the Line of Succession series?
That's a very good question, very loaded question.
You're welcome.
I'll say yes, and I'll say also that the way I have kind of echoes of characters throughout all my work. So the kind of characters within the Line of Succession, although they're the kind of they stand on their own 2 feet and they're their own individuals. In other books I've written, I think if someone were to, you know, read start to finish everything I've ever written, they would see echoes and similarities of different characters within
Mhm.
very different situations. But you know, I like to kind of take a particular archetype and then kind of dress them up a little bit and change them around. So within the Line of Succession, there's two very specific archetypes, which are the main couple, James and Andrew. You know, and just in terms of mechanics, so we say James is the insatiable bottom who cannot be filled, and Andrew his
I
long
love
term
talking to you.
his long-term partner is the, you know, has been kind of thrust into the role of the top. But you know, he's more than that. He's more than just the dumb top, just as James is more than just the insatiable bottom. They're kind of two very complete people. But within the kind of journey of their relationship, they've melded or kind of become morphed into these very unchangeable specific roles that they find it very difficult to explain to each other, you know, different things that may be going on in their head. And that was really the dynamic I wanted to explore within that couple is when a couple's been together for such a long time, it doesn't have to be 15 years, even a few years, but they already put themselves into these roles. What happens if, you know, they want to change that, or that, you know, their minds change, or they become interested in something else? And one of the kind of things that we see within kind of gay culture, if we shall we say, is this kind of push towards putting people into boxes, you know, the dom top and the sub bottom, and these are the boxes that the kind of some people try to define us, or we try to define ourselves with. And then with those kind of two people meet and get into a relationship, then that's lovely if, you know, things never change, but that's not how human beings work. So kind of to come back to that point, I would say Andrew is probably my favorite character because he's going on the most of the journey throughout the kind of, you know, relationships within the Line of Succession books. And a lot of it is told from his perspective. And we get really kind of deep into his kind of thought process of, you know, not only is he kind of facing up to all these, you know, very difficult things going on in his life and with his partner who's supposed to be heir to the throne, and where does that leave him as a kind of, you know, friend to the heir of the throne, to the closeted lover for all these years? Where does that leave him? He's also, you know, as we touched on earlier, having, you know, exploring his identity in other respects, in other ways, and lots of kind of things happen, but he, I think, really embraces. Hopefully, at the end, he'll learn a few lessons. We'll have to wait and find out. But he, I think, embraces the journey, and I think that's why I see he's my favorite character, because he embraces a journey that I would hope that all people reading the book can maybe find a little bit themselves in. That just because one thinks one is in a certain role in life, it doesn't mean that's fixed. It doesn't mean anything is, can't change, can't move, can't progress.
I agree with that. I really do. That's a great point. Really. Well, then you better give Andrew a happy ending.
Oh, he does. He gets lots of happy endings. Lucky bastard. Too many for his own sake, shall we say.
I'm so happy you picked up on that. Craig.
Yeah, so similar to that question, and I have a suspicion who you're going to say, so I will hold on and give you my suspicion after you answer.
Okay.
But do you have a character that you don't really like, but you love writing?
Oh, that's a very good question also.
There's a lot of like those characters, I think. There's a lot of
There's a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah.
No one is really all good and all bad. Everyone has kind of lots of shades of grey. And also my opinion changes sometimes on a daily basis with who I like and who I don't like. I think just because I want to mention her, then his James's twin sister, Princess Alexandra, who's 2 minutes older from James, but because of the kind of rules of succession, she is beneath him in the line of succession. She's the kind of one I have the most love-hate, I think, with, because at some points I agree with her. She's coming from a very feminist point of view. She's got a lot of valid points to say, well, why should she not be given the top job? She wants it. She's better than her brother at it. She cares about the kind of role of monarch, whatever that role is supposed to be. And James, let's face it, he's just, he's a fun-loving guy who, in any other, circumstances, he would be in Mykonos every summer. He would be in Torremolinos every other winter. He would be on cruises. He would be at parties. He's a circuit queen who should just be out there dancing his, little ass off. And he shouldn't be in charge of a country. That's just, I think that should hopefully clear to the readers. But nevertheless, he was born into that position for all the kind of good and bad of monarchy. Them's the rules. So what can you do? So I think Alexandra, his twin sister, is the one I have that kind of, I agree with her, but I'm trying to set her up so that, she's going to kind of go through lots of different things. I think I don't hate any of them. They're all wonderful in their own way. They're all certainly. I wouldn't like to spend any time with them because they're all incredibly toxic. But I think she is. Was that who you were thinking? I would say.
No, actually, I wasn't far off though. I was thinking I might pronounce it wrong, but Faisal, Alexandria's husband. And I think it's because I love the development of his character, particularly I think it's book 3 and onward, where he gets like really interesting to me. But I do echo what you said in that characters you love and you hate them throughout the series. Faisal, I think, is that example for me. Like, I really hate him during some of the books, and then other books I'm like, oh my god, I want him to run away with this other character and just leave everybody else behind. And a lot of those characters, even James and Andrew, I'm like, can we swear on this podcast? I've forgomes.
Yeah, we can. We're good.
I think we've already passed.
We're explicit. Yeah. We've talked about bottoms being filled. Are you serious?
James and Andrew, you fucking idiots! Like, get your act together or just fuck right off. And then other times I'm like, oh my god, they're back together. I love them so much. I just want them to kiss and be happy.
Do you have? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think what's interesting about hopefully all those characters is in some ways they're all kind of trapped by their own circumstances. And I think what's interesting to me is writing about the journey through that. And some people will succeed out of that trap. Some people will not be able to do that and be kind of subsumed by the circumstances they've kind of created for themselves. I think Faisal is such a, like you said, Craig, a really good example of someone who he's kind of seen that he's trapped, and he's seen the kind of things that he's been working toward all his entire life are very suddenly becoming meaningless, and it's leaving him in a situation where he's like, well, what do I do now? I think we'll see it, in the final series, that the choices that he then goes on to make are sadly the choices that other people will make in those situations where there is not always good in everyone. There's not always we shouldn't necessarily, even in romance, people can have kind of, shall we say, happy endings for themselves that are not necessarily the happy ending that we might, kind of assume to be.
I agree with that. Definitely. I want to ask you this, and it's not in my script, but it's just a question that I have as an author because it happened to me a couple times while I was writing. Have you written any characters like in any of your stories that you intended them to be kind of like a character that wasn't going to have a main role, and then they just became so interesting to you that they took on like a bigger role?
Yeah. I think that happens to, really to the best of us as authors. That's really I think the great example when we know we've hit on something very, very interesting. And that's actually why I like to echo my characters in other works, because sometimes I'll come across that. I think that's a really interesting character, and what they're going through, there's a lot to be explored. And then it just becomes down to the discipline of the author. So you have to say, well, in this story, they're only going to play X role, but I'm going to take them and I'm going to maybe write something just for them. I'm going to write their own story. And I actually did that with one of the characters in the other book that Deep Desires publishes, All the Lovers, is a character of a drag queen who really is in it for a chapter or two. They don't have a lot of kind of screen time in the book, shall we say. But to me, the character is so interesting. And also because it's based on someone I used to know, that I kind of have a lot of kind of thoughts about this character and would like to take them. I actually then took that character and I gave them their own TV show.
Oh so my gosh.
I wrote a little TV pilot script based on that character with the same everything from All the Lovers. It's currently kind of in the ether out there with, it was looked at by a production company last year, but they passed on it, but now someone else is looking at it. So, I still love the kind of the dramatic flair of television. I like to try and, try as much as possible to kind of write within the medium that I feel some things are designed for. I think some things are very clearly books, some things are very clearly plays, and some things are very clearly TV shows. So I like to give it a go. I like to give things a try. So I've taken this character from All the Lovers and tried to write them their own TV show. We'll see what goes on. I'm sure if not, we'll revisit them in a book somewhere down the line. But yeah, I think that when that happens to an author, I think it's really a blessing, because I think it's that you think, well, you've been able to come up with someone so interesting, you want to see more of them. And I don't think it's about necessarily rewriting the story you're working on to give them a bigger role, because that's not always the right story, but to take the character, to take whether it's, them entirely or just elements of that character, and give them their own story, the one that they, that you feel that they deserve.
I agree. Wow, that's awesome. That's a great answer. Harry, listen, I don't know. I didn't ask you beforehand how much time you have, so I don't know what you want. I have more questions.
All night. We can keep going and going and going till we drop. I don't care.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have more questions. I always love to be respectful, because I work from home, so I like to be respectful of people's time, and ask. Except for Craig, I can't be respectful of his time.
That's okay.
That's not true. I am respectful of your time.
Disrespected.
That is not. I like being disrespected too. Side note. Go. You ask the next question.
All right. Jumping back into this. And this will be, I think, an interesting question because we've worked together for so long. But thinking back to when you were a new writer, and you can take that however you want, because you started writing in your teens, but you first got published with us, I believe it was 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So thinking back to when you were a new writer, is there anything you've changed about your writing style, or how has it evolved over those years?
It has evolved, even just in the years I've been publishing with you guys. And Cali, you read the first line in succession. You'll notice that it all takes place in one day. There's flashbacks, but everything's in one day. And the reason for that is because when I was first writing it, because it was one of the kind of first complete things that I really wrote, I didn't really know how to do a time jump. I was like, I don't. You're raising your hand.
I'm raising my hand because I agree.
I was like, how do I do it? How do I go? Do I just say 3 weeks later? I hadn't figured that out yet. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep everything just in the one day. We'll have some flashbacks, and then that will work. But since then, I've evolved to be able to kind of deal a little bit, not entirely, but be able to deal a little bit better with time. Although I've kind of tried to keep that convention within the series to try and keep the kind of the main activities or the main action scenes kind of within one day or 1 or 2 days spread over some time. So I definitely have learned as I've been, and I really think that's the way one evolves as an author, is just to keep on writing. There's not really another way to do it apart from just gotta keep going, keep at it, keep trying, and you learn these different things. How do you deal with time? How do you deal with sadness? How do you deal with like all these different things that kind of come up in books, or even just the technical side of it, from chapter length to tone and mood and all that great stuff. It's all a great learning experience, and I think that's definitely kind of one of the things I've noticed at least changing within the period I've been writing the Line in Succession series, is just kind of developing new skills, because you have to try these new things out, and being able to kind of learn new stuff to make the work better.
Yeah. You're really so good at answering questions that you answer like all like the questions, like you answer like two questions at once. So then I sound stupid if I'm like, hey, so what advice would you give to blah? And I'm like, he already answered
Oh,
that.
that's a totally different answer.
So yeah.
I have a different answer for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a different one, okay?
But I also have a different answer for that one. I do. That's not necessarily advice I would give to new writers, though.
No. We have two. So Craig asked you, thinking back to when, is there anything you changed while you're writing style? So now I'm gonna ask you the next one, which is if you could go back in time and give your younger self advice on writing, what would it be?
That's a very good question. I would say don't write, basically. not forever, but not for a little while. Because I think I knew from a young age it's what I wanted to do, and never could quite figure out the how. So I would kind of struggle away for a long time to kind of, I'll try and write this thing, I'll try and write that thing, and it's not really working, and it would get very frustrating, and you'd end up, the thing, you wouldn't like it, you would put it in a drawer for ages, and then you would just be kind of upset that you hadn't been able to kind of succeed with it. So I would say to myself, don't write for really until you're ready. And I wasn't ready to write until until I was about 28. I did feel like I was ready to start writing, because I just didn't have I don't say life experience, because I think that's it doesn't mean one has to be out backpacking for years on end to have life experience, but I just wasn't at the place to be able to take those ideas and put them into, kind of encapsulate them, and to put them into stories, and to kind of think critically about how to do that stuff. And I think that's such an important skill for an author, to be able to look critically at themselves and what are they saying, and why are they saying it, and what do they want to say. I think that's actually the most important advice I would give to any new writers, is what do you want to say? What are you trying to, not necessarily what the message is, but just what's your point of view? And whatever you're writing, are you so many different ones, but what is the message you're trying to give out into the world? Because at the end of the day, we're making art, and books, just like paintings and design and all the rest of it, it's a piece of art. And I'm strongly in the belief that art should say something, even if it's a very, very small thing. It's an element of how we look at the world through our own eyes. And to be an artist, I think you have to have some self-critical ability to look at the thing it is that you're trying to put into the world, and then look at it as objectively as possible to say, well, can this be better? Can I receive feedback? Can I receive criticism? Because criticism will come, whether you ask for it or not. And I think that's the most important thing, is to be ready for that, because once you start, the last thing you want to do is start and then get waylaid by one bad review or one bad experience with somebody, because you should be writing because it's your passion and because it makes you happy, no matter kind of what happens at the end of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I thought, Callie, that sort of covered two questions at once, right? So I'm skipping to the last one here. because you
Yeah.
did sort of cover advice to
Yeah.
new writers as
Yeah.
well. Yes. You're
Yeah.
as Callie said, you're the ideal podcast interview guest.
Yeah. It's like
So
amazing.
our last question in the interview,
Yeah.
although we might have a couple of things afterwards.
Yeah, we have like a couple little things just for fun if you want.
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
totally forgot, but I yes.
Okay.
We'll
All
make it
right.
up on
Wait,
the
you
spot.
forgot like you didn't do it?
I will do it right now as we're talking. I'm doing it in my head.
What?
I'm doing it in my head.
Well, that's good because Craig and I have them for you so you can guess ours while you're thinking of
Okay.
yours. Maybe you do
Okay.
ours first. Okay, so go ahead, Craig.
All right. So the final question, why is writing fiction or gay fiction, whichever term you prefer, why is writing this important to you?
It's a really great question, and I do try and refer to what I do as gay fiction. I think initially I used to kind of use them interchangeably, but I do think for me personally, just as a gay man writing about primarily gay characters and quite gay situations, I feel that term is more appropriate for my work. But for me, like, you know, I really am into history, as kind of Craig will know. I put sometimes far too much history in what I'm writing, but I really, really am into it. And what I've learned, you know, from studying history is that from the start of time, from Adam and Eve onwards, there's been gays, and they've been doing gay stuff. And that kind of gay stuff that they've been doing is so similar to ourselves now that it's kind of scary to see the similarities of people. I've been reading Oscar Wilde a few months ago, and just you read Oscar Wilde's characters, or even read around him or about him. That's 100+ years ago, 130, 40 years ago now. It's the same people dealing with the same stuff. You know, Oscar Wilde was waylaid by a demon twink. And, you know, it happens to the best of us nowadays that we get, you know, follow some demon twink off a cliff, and we end up, you know, doing 2 years hard labor. It happens, you know. I was reading just the other day the short story by Graham Greene. You know, what a wonderful. I don't think Graham Greene is gay. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have a feeling that he's not. But he was in this book of gay short stories, and he's on holiday in this short story, and he's watching this gay couple, and must be in the 50s or 60s, prey on this newly married, bi-curious guy that's staying with them in their hotel. And the way he writes it, and the way you read it, you think, you know, you could have seen it happen a million times in, you know, hotel lobbies and in bars and in restaurants. You know, the kind of very well-to-do gay couple, they'll latch on to, you know, someone that they think they can you know, try their luck with. And here Graham Greene is writing about it, and you know, in the 50s and 60s. And there's another one of my favorite author of all time is a guy called Christopher Cole. And he wrote my favorite book of all time, which is called Such Times. And it's this really, really moving love story that starts in the 1970s and ends tragically in the 1980s. And Christopher Cole himself wrote, I think, 1 or 2 books and then sadly passed away like so many other people. And I discovered this short story that he'd written about this very flamboyant young man who is taken to lunch by his dad because the young man has just been arrested for kind of cruising in the library bathrooms. And he's out having lunch with his dad, and his dad's scolding him for what happened. And the dad is like criticizing him through all the lunch because he's holding his cigarette very flamboyantly. And this must be the 60s or 70s it's being written in. And the son says, you know, I'm not being flamboyant. If you want to see flamboyance, you should have seen what I was doing in the bathroom yesterday. There's these commonalities of gay experiences all throughout history that just kind of come up again and again and again, not just in literature, but I think in our lives. And to me, that's what I love writing about. That's why writing gay fiction is so important to me, because there are so many stories to tell. And it's how those stories, I think, are how we as a community, as a gay community, really can see ourselves. And like when we started this interview, I mentioned those kind of empty bookshelves in my high school. And sadly, we also have empty gay bookshelves because of all the gay authors that we lost in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, I'm also, very interested in the history of AIDS, and it's only really when you start delving into it do you see it's not just the writers that we lost, it's the readers, it's the publishers, it's all the people that would even have remembered that book existed. So many of them have just gone, and one of the kind of the things, the kind of hobbies I have is trying collecting these kind of lost gay stories, and then sharing them, talking about them, telling about these wonderful works. And I've read a few of them over the last few years that I kind of never heard anyone mention or talk about, and they're phenomenal, they're fantastic. They say so much about ourselves and the world that to me that it's so important to remember that and to take the kind of joy of life that was within these books, and to like any author, be inspired by that and tell those kinds and types of stories again in the work I do. So that's kind of to sum up, shall we say, the kind of the driver to me of writing gay fiction is to just try and add to those bookshelves that to me are empty. Whether it's young adult, sci-fi, contemporary, historical, whatever it is, it's to me, it's all about us as our community, and how do we look at ourselves and how do we learn from what's gone before, because there's so much we have all of human history to learn from. We're not having just to do this again and again. It's all there. We just need to find a way to bring it out to people and to show people that here we're here, we're queer, and we're going to talk about it.
I love everything that you say. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose. Like, are you really just like this amazing of a person? Because
I'm really not an amazing person.
You are amazing.
Having known Harry for like 6 years, he is amazing.
I mean,
we've had many
very kind
conversations.
You just said that you purposely seek out these books that are like lost, and you're like bring them back to life. Like what a compliment, and like what an amazing thing to do. Like you're not just like seeking out like what's popular right now or what the newest thing is. Like you're going back and you're like bringing these stories that people have been long forgotten about. You're giving them life again. And I honestly, like, I have goosebumps with that. Like, I don't even know. I don't compliment people this often. This is really, you're really special. You're a very
Thank
special
you very much.
person.
That's very kind of you. I'll just say, just to add to that, actually, that I actually really stopped reading anything written after the year 2000, because it's just, I mean, like to really, I don't go into a book. I'll read, stuff that people I know, stuff that people have written, but I don't go into a bookshop anymore and pick up a new release.
What about funny stuff? What about funny stuff? Okay, so we're talking about funny stuff now. What about funny stuff? Would you read a funny book that comes out, like a funny gay book?
Yeah, I would look at it. I would read it. I would try it. But we're kind of veering into another conversation, which is the state of gay fiction today, which I think is maybe outside of the scope of this podcast, shall we say. But I was in we'll
edit it out later, or we'll leave it in. I'll let you know.
There is a gay bookshop in London called Gay's the Word. So if you're ever in London, it should be the place to go. It's really wonderful. And the last time I was there, I was elbowing my way through a large number of middle-aged ladies who were out hunting for Heartstopper volume whatever, because it had just been on the Netflix. And I went straight to the ever-narrowing shelf of secondhand gay books. And that's where I kind of collect up all my kind of things that are lost and forgotten about. And, there was like some of the covers of these books were a little bit racy or a bit naughty or a bit kind of pulp fiction-y from the 80s and 90s and whatnot. And I had this stack in my hand, and there's like buff men on the top, and there's, cruising or whatever is written over the front. And I was getting looks. I was getting eyes from people who are kind of going for the kind of queer young adult. And, it felt a bit kind of, well, let's not take the sex out of homosexual. Let's not go down a path of Disneyfying gay stories so that we lose the fundamental parts of of what they're about. And maybe you edit this bit out, but I just, even for Craig's benefit, that you're going to be publishing my first young adult story next spring, I think, and I'm very excited by it. It's my first young adult that I wrote, for young adults.
I'm excited about it.
And I think it might be, we'll have to check, but I think it might be the first or one of the only use of, or at least discussion of poppers within a gay young adult book. We may have to check that, but it's certainly
I've not come across that. Yeah.
So to me, it's very, very important that that is in there and that will remain in there, because that's something, that young gay people, whether they decide to use these things or not, it's part of gay culture. And, it should be talked about, I think. There's nothing more active than gay teens, and let's not heart stopper them to death just yet. Let's not, remove all the parts of their identity just because we want it to be mass marketable. I think that's, to me, that's very, very important. So as I start to kind of dip my toes into the world of young adult, I hope to bring or maintain that kind of that type of realism of gay life within the work. So I've forgotten your question, but the answer is poppers.
I don't know who even asked the question. I don't even know.
So the question was, would you read anything fun or funny?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know how we got here.
Yeah, if it's realistic, I'll give everything a go. But I was inspired to actually really write young adult because of when I read Simon versus the Homo sapien agenda, and then actually I watched the movie Love, Simon first of all, and then I was so overcome with shock that I actually had to go and read the book to see if it really was what I thought it was. And that whole story, for those that know or don't know, the guy's going around apologizing to everyone for being gay. And I can't get over that message. And to me, I was like, whatever else is good and whatnot about the kind of Love, Simon world, and again, not to throw shade, actually, well, I hope you don't have sun cream on, because this is going to get a bit shady. But I feel that book or that story really cemented for me why it was important for me personally to stick with being an author, even as difficult as it is, because I have no issue with whoever writes books. I don't care if it's men, women, whatever it is. I think a good book is a good book, and a good author will do the research. So I couldn't care less, the person who's writing the book. But to give out a message in something like Love, Simon, that the book is based around apologizing for being gay, I just felt, no, thank you. That's not the message that I would want a young gay person to have. That I felt, inspired to kind of try and give out my own message that I want young gay people to have. And it's definitely not having to say sorry. And it's definitely not having to write many letters to say sorry. So, that's, I'll leave it there. But that was the reason behind writing young adult for me.
That's awesome.
So not to extend this conversation too much longer, but that was similar to me. Like, I watched the Love, Simon movie, and then I had to go and read the book. And the book is quite different than the movie. I don't really remember all the apologizing, but thinking back, I think I remember that now. And I remember loving the movie so much more because it was just like a typical teenage romance comedy movie where it's two male characters instead of male female. And it was so, like, it sounds so basic, but it was also so groundbreaking in many ways. And I wanted to tell more stories like that, not more stories like the book. And people love the book, so I'm not criticizing the book. But it wasn't what I was looking for. The movie was what I was looking for, but in book form. And that led to me writing my own, and then led to us launching Deep Hearts YA to publish more books, and to eventually publish yours, which I'm really looking forward to diving into soon.
Good. That's fantastic. We've all been inspired in many different ways.
Yeah. So if you want, we can do the 2 truths and a lie if you want, Harry.
Yeah.
And if you
absolutely.
don't, then we say goodbye. So
I'm definitely into that. I have them ready to go.
okay. So who wants, well, Harry, you're gonna go last. You're gonna
Okay.
do it last. So you get to guess first. Craig, you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Sure. No, I can go first. And Callie knows the answer. So, Harry, this is just for you.
Okay.
So, two of these are true and one of them is a lie. Number one, I once had a job where I dressed up as Blue from Blue's Clues and sang and danced for kids. Number
Mhm.
two, I'm double jointed. Number three, I can turn Brussels sprouts haters into Brussels sprouts lovers.
3, that's the lie. It's impossible.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I am not
Shocked.
double jointed. That's a lie. So with the Brussels sprouts, I almost met my match this summer. There was one guy that came over for a barbecue. He's like, I hate Brussels sprouts so effing much. Do not serve me Brussels sprouts. And I was like, oh, guess what's for the appetizer at this barbecue? It's Brussels sprouts. He tasted it and he said, honestly, it is the best Brussels sprout I've ever had, but I'm not going to have a second one. So he was my closest match to that claim to fame, but I have converted many people over the years.
I'm interested in that really because I do not like Brussels sprouts, but like I would
so
eat
good.
probably like I have to be careful how I say this because everything that we say like literally gets turned into something. Our chats are this way constantly. I forget it. I would eat anything that you gave me. I just would. So I would totally trust you. I trust you with what goes in my mouth.
I don't think I would trust that. I think as a safe sex educator, it should be wrapped up.
I will shrink wrap your Brussels sprout for you.
Okay. All right. So for me, I haven't watched a show. Oh, sorry. For Two Truths and a Lie for me, I haven't watched a show with real people in it in 3 years. My parents operate a gondola tour service in Florence, Italy, and I've gotten every job I've ever interviewed for.
What was the first one again?
I haven't watched a show with real people in it in 3 years.
I don't know if I believe that. You'd strike me as a Real Housewives type of person.
Is that what you're going with? You going with number one?
Yeah.
No, that one is the truth. Yeah, I have not watched a show with real people in 3 years.
Wow.
I am pretty heavily anime obsessed. So I really only watch anime. I have not watched anything with real people in it in 3
But if
years.
you watch Real Housewives, you might be addicted.
No. So yeah, the lie was my parents operate a gondola tour service in Florence, Italy.
That's very interesting lie.
It is an interesting lie, isn't it?
Why that lie? Have you been to Italy?
I am 100% Italian. I am Calabrese and Sicilian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but both my parents have passed on, but I actually, in one of my books, I made them gondola drivers. They operate a gondola tour service in Florence, Italy, because I think that if they were here, that's what they would be doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so nice.
Yeah. And I have gotten every job I've ever interviewed for.
Good for you. Have you been to Italy?
I have not been to Italy. I am terrified of flying. I was just talking to Craig about this yesterday or the day before. I'm terrified to fly. I do not like planes, Harry.
Yeah. I used to be the same. I also used to be absolutely petrified of flying, but I think a couple of Valium and some whiskey or vodka, it really makes such a big difference.
All right.
But I think you can get over it. I just was because I really feel you. I really feel like what it was like to have that fear, and it stops you sometimes from planning it out. And I think if you're able to work through that, you can make things so much. We wouldn't give up on working through that because I feel you can overcome that. Anyone can overcome that. It's possible. Okay, so I'll do mine. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 truths and 1 lie. Right? Okay. So number 1. I write out everything by hand, first of all. Number 2, I once played a murdered child in a police training video. Number 3, there was a play in Chicago based on my sex life.
I'm going to go with
All of those are believable.
They are all believable. Tell me number 1 again, one more time. Oh, you write everything out, right?
I write everything out by hand, first of all. Number two, I was murdered in a police training video as a child. And number three, I have a play in Chicago. There was a play in Chicago was based on my sex life.
I'm gonna say two, but what
I'm
do you
gonna
think?
say number one. I don't think you write everything by hand.
Craig,
We both believe the sex life play thing.
Yeah,
you know
for
me
sure.
too well, Craig. I definitely do not write out everything by
Yay,
Absolutely not.
Craig!
And actually, that play became All the Lovers, which
Oh,
is a book
excellent.
Really?
published by Deep Desires Press.
Oh,
So
that's so
there
exciting. I
you go.
actually do write stuff out by hand.
Well, good for you, because I think that's a really wonderful skill, and I think it really helps like focus the mind. So really kudos to you for doing
I think I have like carpal tunnel because of it, so I don't think it's that
that.
great, but
But you
but
really
sure.
wrote out 200,000 words of your
Oh no,
manuscript
no,
by
no, no, no,
hand?
no, 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 no. No, I
Okay.
did not write out all 228,000 words, but I have over there the first draft that I wrote that like, beginning, middle, end, like that. I wrote out the one day because the day that it
Wow.
came to me, I was at work. And so my
Yeah.
husband was like, just write because he's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an idea for a story. And he's like, well, write it out. So I'm like, sure. And I'm like
Oh,
writing on the
fantastic.
paper and it was like 3 pages. So at the end of the night, he was like, so what did you write? I'm like, here. And he was like, this is like a whole story. I'm like, yeah, it's like a whole story. But
That's
I
amazing.
find like when you're passionate about it, I think your hand just kind of moves on its
Yeah.
own,
Yeah. And does your
Um,
husband,
So
does he read everything that you write? Does he
he
like give
does.
you
I am very super lucky in it that he has read everything that I wrote. But I'm very, the thing that sucks about me is that I will take feedback from Craig, but I
Mhm.
will not take feedback from my husband. So because I'm like Craig is like, he's my publisher, he's my editor, he's my
Yeah.
bestie, and like I know that you listened to the first podcast, but with the advice that he gave me from the first one, I did instantly trust him because he was able to pinpoint issues so quickly.
Mm.
So like with my husband, I'm like, okay, and I think that in relationships you need to be clear about what you want and
Yeah.
how you want it. I think that that's really important, and you can't be afraid to tell the other person what you want. So
Yeah.
we learned very quickly with my writing. I was like, here's what I want. I want you to listen, tell me if
Mhm.
it flows, and that's it. Like don't tell me if it's funny, don't tell me if it's
Yeah.
not funny, don't tell me what should come out, because that would just be his opinion. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So he
Yeah.
could get me totally off track and I could totally screw up, but I'm very like big on my ideas kind of being my own too.
Yeah.
So like I don't like to be influenced by what someone else tells me. So if I
Yeah.
write it out, I don't want him to say, I don't like this character or something, which he wouldn't say. But yeah, no, there's times like, especially like with sex scenes, I'll read a sex scene and he's like, okay, yep, I got it. And I'm like, I'm like, I know, but let me just see if it flows. So then usually I end up going to Craig, like, can
Yeah.
he bite his ass here? Is this okay? But yeah, no, we have a lot of fun with my stories.
That's
So
great. And
yeah.
Craig, I'm fascinated to know about the dynamics of yourself and John. Who reads whose, and what comments or feedback do you each other read each other's stuff? I mean, I assume you must do, no?
he's banned from reading my stuff
Mm.
because he would give me feedback, and I think now I could handle it. Back
Yeah.
in the day, I couldn't because it's like you're being really harsh, buddy. And so I would start writing some stuff in there that was just deliberately to tick him off. I remember writing at one point, like he inhaled his wonderful scent. He smelled just like mac and cheese, just to get that little burst of irritation from him, and I enjoyed that part. But John makes me read pretty much all of his stuff.
Mm.
Makes me read. And when we first met, he actually handed me a binder, which was his first novel, handwritten. And he's
Wow.
like, "Can you type this up for me?" And like being in a new relationship, I'm like, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I can type. So I typed up his about 130,000 word handwritten
My
manuscript for him.
goodness.
Wow. How long were you dating when
Crazy.
that happened?
Like 2 months.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah,
It sounds like a workplace violation more than it does a
a
kind
little
of new
bit.
relationship.
Yes, I should file a complaint.
Get some back wages for that. My goodness, that's a lot of work.
Oh my gosh.
We all
I
do
think,
things when we're young and stupid and in love.
of course, and I think that's adorable.
It is.
And
Sure.
also, not adorable. Like, he didn't pay you? Did he take? He took you out to dinner or something after? I can't talk bad about
Um,
John. John's my
I
boss too.
mean, that was like 12 years ago, so I don't really remember, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Yes, he made up for it somehow.
I bet he did. John is the best. I bet. Well, John's second best because you're first best, so John's second best. But I wanted to ask you, because somebody asked me this question: is there a difference? And I don't care. Either one of you can answer it. Is there a difference in kinky writing and erotic writing?
Hmm. Good question.
Speaking from the publisher aspect, uh, actually, there's two ways to answer that. One is that kinky writing is, I would say, like a subgenre of erotic writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because erotic writing can be this whole range of things, and so kinkier stuff would be one subgenre of it.
Mm-hmm.
But another way to answer that question is you can have something that's kinky but not erotic.
Hmm.
Actually, maybe it depends how you're defining the terms. You can have
Hmm.
people doing kinky stuff, but it's not written in an erotic way,
Okay.
which you wouldn't do very often.
Is there a difference between a fetish and a kink?
Now you're asking.
That sounds like a sexual health
I'm
educator
asking you,
question.
Harry.
Being a
Is there a
fetish,
difference?
I would think maybe I don't know completely. I'm not a fetish educator, so I'll just preface it with that because those do exist. I think maybe the fetish is the thing that you have inside, the kind of interest that one has, and perhaps the kink is like the act of doing it. Perhaps like the
Hmm.
kink is also the physical expression. I also
Hmm.
heard it told to me that a fetish is something basically you can't have sex without it, or the sex is unfulfilling if the fetish is not a part of
Oh, wow.
the activity. Whereas I think a kink is, just a thing you might add into it. So I'm not
Interesting.
100% sure. It's a very interesting arena to explore.
Yeah. I get asked a lot of weird questions. So, and I'm gonna start integrating them in because like Craig and I think we're gonna start doing a segment like what's in Callie's DMs because I get like the weird stuff. I don't know. Craig gets better stuff than I get.
Yeah.
No? Yes, you do. You get way better stuff than I do.
Very good questions. Very,
Kind of, yes, very good questions.
I think a great one for, this podcast to think about. Like, writers and readers are thinking about these questions. I think it's really interesting. It's nice to have a place to explore them. So
Well, it
just
is.
just to
Yeah.
say
And go
kudos
ahead.
to the both of you for doing this because I think, there isn't really podcasts like this that I think are accessible and, that people who either are aspiring writers or just readers or just interested in, these books or things that people are doing to really just to listen to. Things seem to be very, very high level. And I like that this is very accessible. So I think this is a great job you two are doing.
Oh, thank you. And I'm super happy that we had you on as our second guest and you are just amazing and I can't wait for the book to come out. And we have the pre-order link is up
Yeah.
and people need to go pre-order it right now because
They
it's gonna
do. They do. So it's
yes.
The Line of Succession 6, God Save the question mark, because who knows what will happen at the end. But I would encourage you to read the first five, first of all. They're not very, very long. They're kind of shorter books, so you can get through them relatively quickly. But that will be the kind of final piece of this Line of Succession puzzle. And also, obviously, you can check out All the Lovers, which is my kind of contemporary gay romance, also published by Deep Desires. And you will be able to check out my upcoming young adult book from Deep Heart next spring, which is called, the name escapes me right now. So
I think it's Of Gods and Men,
Of
or
Gods
Of
and
Gods and
Boys.
Boys.
Of Gods
Yes.
and Boys. Thank you so much for that. It's called Of Gods and Boys. It'll be coming out next spring. And then there will be a short story collection, Genre Queer, will be coming out at some point, let's hope over the next year or so, also from Deep Desire. So, and also you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at Harry_F_Ray. I'm on Instagram I don't have an OnlyFans yet, but if you like to see people eating chips in their underwear, then maybe I might open one. Who knows? Or you can find my books on Amazon as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Harry. This was so much fun, really.
I'm glad. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a delight, and I can't wait for the next episode.
During the first episode, we decided that the guest of the week has to give us our final closing statement. So, very last seconds of the podcast, what do you want people to leave with?
Read gay books.
Perfect.
Very good.
Perfect.
All right, I think that's a wrap, isn't it?
That is a wrap. All right, so thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
See you next time.